Hey, I'm Mark Edward Lewis, and welcome to Cinema Sound Studio B. I get a lot of people asking me about ambiences and how do we edit them, but also how do we choose good ambiences? How do we know what works and what doesn't? Where do we put them in surround, what goes in the floor and the back and all of this? Well, in this article, video article, if you will, we're going to look at Blade of Honor, which we worked on for several months, although I think we only spent about a day having to do the ambiences, and show you what we did, and hopefully that'll inspire you to make your ambiences, which is really the glue, the most important part of your immersive elements in audio. Have your ambiences be inspiring for you and your audiences. Let me show you what I'm talking about. We're here in the Blade of Honor mix, which is about 250 tracks total. The ambiences are here, whatever that is, 15 or 10 or something like that. And we're in Pro Tools, so don't be confused. If you're like, I don't use Pro Tools, what is all this? Don't worry, it's the same kind of timeline with the clips here, and no problem. Same old kind of thing. I want to play you this scene, the full mix of this scene, and then we're going to dive in and take a look at and listen to the ambiences and hopefully learn something.
Tardy, Rig 2, Grandmaster Uni.
On Rig 2, Rajan. I'm afraid you'll have to make your trip to the Mogashis air platform immediately.
Now, you may not be able to notice the ambiences, and we want ambiences mixed very low. It's the glue, as I mentioned earlier, that holds the production together. And there's a ton of music in here too, which also has a gluing kind of element. But if there's no music, then your ambiences have to really be standing out. But since we have music here, let's take a listen to just the ambiences in this same bit and see what they sound like. See what I have dumped in here. It's pretty dense. There's a lot of stuff going on there. It's not that interesting, but ambiences should never be like, hey, listen to that. There's, guys, well, let's just take a listen here. So I'm going to solo this. First, we have this track here, which is here. Sort of a walla chatter kind of thing. And that is located... let's see. Oh, I'm hiding the pan window, so you cannot see it on my other screen. It's sort of middle. It's mono. It's kind of in all the speakers, just kind of really subtly, which is really cool. Let's check out this next one. The karate class approaching, whatever in the world, with SCHC compet or whatever in the world that means. But just somebody back in the background doing some cool stuff. Let's see where I've put that. Oh, a really interesting place. All in the right speaker. Whichever way right is for you, and sort of to the left-ish on the way back, so it's not invading anyone's specific space. That's cool. How about this one? Kind of a cool otherworldly cave, and that's, I think, exclusively in the surrounds, which it is. It's all in the back. Nice stereo file. Now this one's one that I think makes all the difference in the world, and it's well, you just have to see for yourself. Can you hear it? It's little drops of water, like in a cave. And even though they're not really in a cave, since in an earlier shot, we see it's sort of like Petra, where they've hewn this temple out of a mountainside. So it sort of is a cave. But adding the little drops of water super low in the mix gives you a sense of it's kind of wet and moist and maybe a little cold and certainly stony in there. And let's see, and I've got, because it is a sci-fi picture, let's take a look at this. Now, if you don't have great speakers or are listening on one of these headphones that we sell on Cinema Sound, you may not be able to hear this, but it's a low pulsing. You can see it here in the waveform. Cool. And then we come down here. There's a temple door that opens. And these are, you could consider these sound effects, but they really serve no purpose to forward the story. They're just in the background. There it was, very, very subtly. And then we have a little bell that shows up later on as well. And I think that's all the ambiences that are in here. So once again, we'll take a listen to all these ambiences in concert. Works really well, really nice. And if you can't hear it in surround here, but in the surround, and it's very enveloping in a surround atmosphere. All right, so let's listen to this mix once again, but now let's listen to it without the ambiences. So I'm going to mute this ambience track, all these ambience tracks.
On tardy Rig 2, Grandmaster Uni.
On Rig 2, Regent. I'm afraid you'll have to make your trip to the Mogashis air platform immediately.
And this is what most independent films sound like to me. Most independent productions sound like this. Good Foley, music's many times good. Dialogue hopefully is clean. And, you've got sound effects. There's no sound effects really in here. But the ambiences really aren't there. No one thinks about it. Now listen to it again with the ambiences in.
On tardy Rig 2, Grandmaster Uni.
On Rig 2, Regent. I'm afraid you'll have to make your trip to...
And off.
On tardy Rig 2, Grandmaster.
It's subtle, isn't it? It's very difficult to hear. And if you're listening to it on your laptop speakers in a noisy room or even a quiet room, you're probably not noticing much difference. But I promise you it's there, and it's subconscious. And in a theater or any kind of isolated environment, it makes all the difference. Now, some of you have asked about, how do we cut ambiences, how much time in between and those kinds of things. And for that, it's a really great question. We're going to roll back here to the end of the last scene and the beginning of the next. And then we're back into the scene that we had. So let's take a look at these ambiences. We will solo them so you get an idea. There's a ton of music in there, but check out the ambiences. Cool. There's There is the big sound in there is the waterfall that has to be dealt with. So here is that waterfall. There's two different kinds of waterfalls. It's far away and then one where it's close. And we fade in the waterfall as it comes into picture, nice and easy, just using a simple crossfade. And there's birds and things and general ambience. Here's the forest action. Pan to the surrounds. Here's the other forest action. Pan to the fore, and then the waterfall comes in. And then once we cut to the cave, here's what it sounds like. Sort of the same sound, but just different level. And in a different place of the file. And the same here. And then obviously the waterfall gets bigger. We add 2 layers worth of waterfalls. And the other waterfall. Kind of more of a thump. Yep, that's it. Let's zoom in and take a closer look at how we've done this. Now, right away, we can see that there's something that's kind of weird here, and I've left this in just to show you how this works. And you'll notice that these ambiences are 1 frame later. If it starts here, then it's later. Well, wouldn't that be late? Well, if you did it early, because the nature of how your eye works with your brain and how incredibly slow it is, your eye doesn't process information very fast, but your ear does really, really fast. And if you put it on the other side of the cut, it feels early. Now, it's going to be very difficult for you to tell because the video is probably delayed on your streaming and all of that other kind of stuff. But I've also created, just as an error, this early fade-in of the waterfall. So let's solo these 2 waterfall tracks. Come back here. Let's see here. Do you hear it go, ba-da, ba-da? And that's the difference of what a frame will make. If it's a frame early, that's a problem. So let's line this up correctly. And now take a listen to it. Here it's dead on sync together. So one frame you may not feel like is a big deal, but obviously it was a big deal because I went ta-da versus bam all together. I'm making musical phonemes out of what that must sound like. Same thing with the rest of these. We want these crossfades to all happen at the same time, or if they're not crossfading, to fade up as this one does, as these two kind of come out on their own track. So let's take these earlier a frame and see how it feels. First, let's just remind ourselves how this feels with this one. And, you know, again, your video may be a little off, so take that into account. All right. You may be like, yeah, it feels late to me. Well, okay. Let's try it a little earlier here. I'm just going to move these all over one frame. And Pro Tools does it this way. Your digital audio workstation may do it a different way. Try this. It just feels a little early, feels like you're jumping the gun a little bit. And again, you may not be able to tell in your streaming, but my rule of thumb is one frame. Whoa, wrong key. One frame at the cut happening after the cut. So we'll pull it back here. And just to remind ourselves, the cut is here, the crossfade happens after. You can expand it to 2 frames if, you know, the sound needs it or there's some weirdness in the crossfade, and that's okay. In which case, then you would split or, yeah, go either side of the cut. Not 2 frames late, that's too much. So you would start it and then crossfade on after it if you needed to. And you could, you know, but it really is a case-by-case basis. The rule for me would be 1 at a time. All right, here's a weird example that I want to give you really quick, though. There's no crossfades here, right? It's just the incoming and the outgoing. Look at where the cut is, which is here. And you're like, well, Mark, hey, you crossfaded that in before. Yes, but remember I said that 2 frames is okay if you need to. And in this case, since there was no crossfade, I started the fade up on these incoming ambience tracks 1 frame before the cut and faded these out after, which basically creates that 2 frame crossfade, which is okay. If I had, say, for example, moved these over to here, then what you have is an energy loss because this one's fading up while this one's fading down and the overall ambience feeling dips. I'll show you what I mean. Let's just listen to these once again. Let's make sure I'm still in ambiences. Okay. There's a little dip. Again, very hard to hear, but if I move these back 1 frame, here we go. Much better. Once again. And once again with them 1 frame over. Here, it just dips in there. And if you had more strenuous or strong ambiences, it would be far more obvious. So ambiences may not be that cool, but they're so crazy, critical, important, right? You kind of get the idea. When you get rid of them, all of a sudden you're kind of awake going, oh, what's going to happen after the movie or whatever. But with ambiences in place, it tunes out the brain of the audience, and that's what you want. And choosing those right ambiences and having fun doing it is everything. Let us know how your ambience selection and panning is going by contacting us on the cinemasound.com blog and forum. Until then, we'll see you in post.
Even if it's for yourself.